One of the most fascinating characters I've had on the podcast throughout the last year and a half has been Rob Pizzola, who's a professional sports bettor out of Canada. We talked about modelling, we talked about his partnerships with other people in the betting industry, we talked about comparing his models and plays with fellow professional sports bettor Rufus Peabody and the overall life of a professional sports bettor. It was really fascinating stuff, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've just taken out some of the best bits, but I highly recommend watching the whole podcast if you have time later. But here are just the best bits of our conversation. I know you probably have complete confidence in your models and what you do, but does that not, like when you hear someone like Rufus, who's almost betting against having the opposite pick as you every time, what does that do to you? Like, how does that make you feel?
Like, the immediate thought is, this person's a very good golf bettor. I'm ending up on the opposite side of everything. Do I have to revisit everything I'm doing? I mean, that's the first thought that pops into your head. But then obviously, I pride myself on getting the best numbers available. And I'm thinking in my head as well, I'm betting these guys and the market is tending to move with me as well. So I think what ended up happening is, over the course of 5 to 10 minutes, we realized we're getting vastly different numbers, whether that be through different sports books or just the timing of our bets, where the market kind of settles somewhere in between for the most part. So there's positive expected value on both sides. It's very difficult for a lot of people to kind of grasp that concept. Well, how could two people be betting complete opposite sides and both be successful? It's rare, but that was kind of what we arrived at after talking about it. It's still concerning. Like, I do respect Rufus quite a bit, especially with the golf craft. Like, he's always been known in market as the guy that beats golf. So it's troublesome whenever you hear something along those lines, but you kind of got to not let it get to you, especially when you're betting lines that are like 40 or 50 cents off of what he's potentially played.
Yeah, was there ever a point where you thought, mate, should we just team up?
Well, that won't happen. So, like, I'd love to team up with Rufus with golf, like a divide and conquer approach. I know it's sports I'm pretty good at myself, and probably I'd argue that he would admit it, that I have a higher ROI on those sports than he does. And there's approaches where you can split up and divide and conquer. I currently work with a partner of sorts already. So now you're spreading yourself really thin when you start to, open it up even more. But, there's been those conversations like that happens in sports betting. People look to help other people in return for something of value to them. Most of the time it's not, it could be sharing of picks or sharing of numbers pertaining to a certain sport. It could be access to different accounts or things of that nature, but it's not unheard of to kind of partner up with another pro in order to benefit both of you guys, I guess.
How long were you posting your bets on Twitter for, I assume it was ice hockey, until someone approached you?
The conversation was very honest with me. It was like, we see you posting your numbers every day. Someone's betting those numbers on screen as immediately as you post them. And it's affecting our ability to get down on baseball games. And we agree with you on a lot of the sides. So we'd like for you to not post these publicly anymore. And in order, we'll offer you a free roll, essentially giving me a free bet on whatever I wanted in baseball. And that's how that relationship started, and it kind of grew. But that was probably about a year after I had been posting on a daily basis. But I was I was a noob at that time. Like, it didn't really dawn on me that I had something of value and other people were exploiting it, so to speak. I mean, not really exploiting it because I was posting it for free, but other people were using it to their advantage. So kind of like opened my world, and I definitely wouldn't be where I am now had I not developed that relationship very early, because lucky enough, that was a strong partnership in the sense that, again, I was very novice at the time, like probably thought I knew a lot more than I did at the time. And they were pretty helpful in explaining how things actually work. And I developed a pretty good understanding of the betting space through that relationship.
You said before that you're kind of known as the ice hockey guy. Can you talk a bit about, I mean, you said that this has probably been for a couple of years now, so I assume your ice hockey models haven't always been the exact same as, let's just say 5 years ago. I assume they're a lot different to what it is today. Can you explain like the process of updating and kind of the challenges with that, and how often you're doing that?
Yeah, there's an evolution to it every single year. So every off season, I focus on updating the model in some capacity. Part of what happens, like new data becomes available pretty much every year, and you got to start incorporating that new data. Or at least, I mean, you don't have to, but you should be testing it at least to see if it's going to improve your models. So that's essentially what I do throughout the course of the season. Is I'm constantly, like, I have all these notepads all around here, and I'm just constantly writing things down, or else I'm going to forget them. Of just like to go back in the off season and check this. Is this still worth what it was before? So on and so forth. Should I be using this data set instead of that? A number of things. So yeah, there's a constant updating in the off season every year. I'll say just the biggest changes though are from a data perspective. Like even thinking back to 4 or 5 years ago in the NHL, it was very, very simple data. Like there was really no advanced tracking like we have nowadays. And that's really caused me to update things a lot more. Like I can pull up my original NHL model and I probably would just laugh at how unsophisticated it was, but it was winning like an incredible amount of money at the time just because there wasn't a lot to work with. And that's like the common misconception in sports betting as well, is like, there's all these unknowns in sports. How are you ever going to like come up with a real probability on a game? And I tell people all the time, I don't have to come up with 100% like the actual probability on a game. I just have to set a better probability than the book is setting. And if I can set better probabilities on the outcome of the game than what's being offered, I'm going to win in the long run. So at that time, even the use of very basic data was easy enough to beat markets. Now it's not the case anymore. There's certainly a lot more hockey data with more coming at a player level as well, which will force me to refine my focus even further. But that's a given for me every year. I'm always looking for continuous improvement. For me, it's if you are constantly running the same thing, it will work probably for a period of a couple of years, but it becomes outdated too quickly and you just lose your edge way too quickly.
So you'd never update during a season?
I occasionally do. I mean, there's some times where you'll just see something, like, for example, last year, Major League Baseball, the balls were clearly juiced, meaning that there was going to be more home runs. However they were constructing the ball for baseball last year was producing more runs, and that became very evident early on in the season. And you do have to account for that right away, or else you're going to be playing unders on every single game, and you're going to be losing your shirt. So there are times where you're forced to adapt fairly quickly. There are times where you can leave it to an off season, or just or not necessarily an off season, but to downtime. Like it's not something that's pressing and needs your attention immediately. So there's I guess it's probably a pretty even split of both, but I will update in season if I notice something is just stands out as not being the norm.